Okay, so there are going to be certain cases where you're going to want to get the value that you currently have in a variable, and you're also going to want to use that same variable for storage, all in a single line of code. So a simple example of this that we'll see in a moment would be cases where you want to maybe take a running total of values. So each time that you're adding a new value to total, you want to also store the result. So you're doing whatever the current total is plus your new value. You want to store that result back into total. So you want to consider a couple of different ways that you might go about doing this. So depending on which side of the assignment operator that you place a variable, the way that that variable is interpreted will be different. So if you have a variable that is on the right-hand side of the assignment operator, then that variable is going to be interpreted as whatever value it currently holds. So we've already seen that before when we did, say maybe getting the sum of two numbers. We did num1 and num2. So our num1 and num2 were just interpreted as the values that they held, which were 10 and 5. So we go ahead and add them together and then store that result into sum. On the other hand, if we have a value that is, or a variable that is on the left-hand side of the assignment operator, then that variable is going to be interpreted as kind of like a blank slate that is just waiting for some new value to be stored into it. So to give you an example of this, we've got our total, which is initialized to 0. So naturally, if you want to get a total of things, before we start counting any of those things, we start at 0. So we've got int total equal to 0. We'll initialize it. We'll then go ahead and have a line right here where we're going to say that total equals total plus 100. So the total is on the right side of that assignment operator. That's going to hold the value 0. So that's whatever the current value happens to be. But then total on the left-hand side is going to be like our blank slate. So that's going to be where we're going to end up storing the result of total, which has 0 plus 100. So we'll add those two together, we get 100, and we'll store that back into total. On the next line, we're going to go ahead and repeat this process. So we're going to do total on the right side. That now holds the value 100 inside of it after the previous operation. But total on the left side, again, is still going to be treated as that blank slate. So we'll go ahead and do this operation. We'll add them together, and then the result is going to be 150. We're storing that back into total. And then on this very last line, we're going to go ahead and print that to the console. So let's go ahead and just write out these 4 lines in our own program so we can start breaking this down a little bit more. So we'll come over here and we'll go ahead and create a new project. Go ahead and make sure this is a Java application. And for this one, we're going to go ahead and say that this is for combined operators. So I'll go ahead and make my project named combined operators. Go ahead and finish. We'll then go ahead and remove any of the extra comments that we don't need. Make some slight adjustments to the style. And then right here, we'll go ahead and write in that initialization. So we're going to say total initialized to 0. So this will be our comment for this. We're going to say int total equals 0. We'll then go ahead and say that we're doing total plus 100 stored back into total. Let's use a comma. So we're going to say total is equal to total plus 100, keeping in mind that this total will hold the value 0 inside of it, whereas this total is essentially going to be our blank slate that's just waiting for something to be stored into it. We'll then go ahead and repeat this process. So we're going to do total plus 50, again stored back into total. We're going to say total equals total plus 50. And so now, since this last operation resulted in total holding the value 100 in it now, we're going to use that value here. So this is going to be 100 plus 50, and then the result's going to be stored into total. So that's going to give us 150. So then at the very end, if we go ahead and print this out, let's go ahead and do system.out.println and print out total. We'll go ahead and run this, and we see that we get that total of 150 at the very end of this. So another way that we could go about doing this is for all of the binary operators that we've seen so far, we can actually combine those operators with the assignment operator. So the purpose of these combined assignment operators is to be able to perform an operation on a variable and store the result of that operation back into the same variable in a more concise way than what I previously showed in that program. So a couple of examples of these. So we can see that we've got total plus equals 100, and then I've got a comment that basically shows what that statement actually means. So that's basically the equivalent of total equals total plus 100. So if we come over to our program, we can modify these two lines to go ahead and do that. So let's say that we comment this out, and right in front of it, we'll go ahead and write in total plus equals 100. So now we're going to use the combined assignment operator plus equals to accomplish this behavior in a more concise or more compact way. We can go ahead and do the same thing right here as well. So we'll go ahead and comment this out, and right in front of that comment, we'll just put in total plus equals 50. And this will again do the same thing, where it's just going to be the equivalent of total equals total plus 50. So the overall result of this will be exactly the same. We're just kind of shortening up the length of our code, or the amount of characters that we need per line. So if we run this, we'll still get that same result as before of 150. In addition to that, we can also do this with our other binary operators. So we've got one with the subtraction operator. So we've got subset minus equals 27. That would be equivalent to subset equals subset minus 27. We've also got it with multiplication. So product times equals 8. That would be equivalent to product equals product times 8. And then in addition to being able to do this with all of our numeric or our arithmetic operators, we can also do this with string concatenation. So keep in mind that with string concatenation, that also uses the plus or the addition character. So it's very similar to arithmetic addition. The key difference here is that you're just combining phrases or string literals together. So let's say that we start off with an empty string. So we just have a pair of double quotes with nothing inside of it. So we're going to say string phrase is equal to that empty string literal. We're then going to say phrase plus equals hello world. So that's equivalent to saying phrase equals phrase plus hello world, which basically means that with phrase on the right-hand side, so it's going to be interpreted as whatever value phrase currently holds, which is that empty string, whereas phrase on the left-hand side of the assignment operator is going to be treated as a blank slate that's just waiting for some new string to be stored inside of it. So in this case, all this is really doing is just taking that empty string, adding hello world to it, and then storing hello world into back into our phrase. And I should note now, for this particular situation, when we're dealing with string concatenation, as well as some cases with our arithmetic operators, this need to use a variable is both the literal value that's stored inside of it, so being able to use it on the right-hand side of the assignment operator, and as that blank slate of storage, so also using it on the left-hand side of the assignment operator. This will become more meaningful when we get into loops, which will be a fair bit later on. But to go ahead and do one example of this, so we'll go ahead and come over to our combined operators. So we've got one showing how to do it with math operators. We'll go ahead and do one that shows it with string concatenation as well. So we've got our string phrase. This will be equal to an empty string, so it's just a pair of double quotes with nothing inside of it. We'll then go ahead and say that we want phrase plus equals hello world. And this is again equivalent to if we did phrase equals phrase plus hello world. And so if we go ahead and do a print statement for this one, we'll go ahead and put phrase here. And then if we run this, then it will just go ahead and print out that phrase, hello world, to the console. And once we get into loops a little bit later on, I'll come back to this and start showing it as we add more and more content to our strings by repeatedly concatenating some additional phrase or some additional string literals to it. But at this point, this is going to wrap up everything for combined operators. Going into the next video, I want to go ahead and start taking a look at being able to perform conversions between our different primitive data types. Primarily, we're going to be focusing on conversions between the numeric data types.